Hey everybody, welcome to Center Stage. I'm your host Rajiv, and today I have Kelly Hopping, Chief Marketing Officer from Gartner Digital Markets. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So Kelly, you've been in your role relatively new, as CMO, around 3 to 4 months. Mm-hmm. So how has that been going for you?
Oh, it's been great. I'm truly having a ball. I love the people. I love the culture. I've come from a company before that was going through a lot of change, a lot of declines, tough economic changes. And so it's just been fun to be in an environment that's growing. People are excited to be there. Employee engagement is high. Nice. I think I was most surprised my first day when I walked in and people were all doing. Does that sound terrible? Mm-hmm. They were activating, which I had sort of watched in organizations that are struggling or in large enterprise. You often sort of do marketing by PowerPoint, meaning you just kind of go through the motions of a marketing strategy without actually activating. And to walk in the door and everybody was just cranking. Everybody walks in the door every day to drive the business. Everybody wants to drive revenue. Everybody sees the fruits of their labor.
That's awesome.
And I just love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Gartner Digital Markets consists of Capterra, Software Advice, and GetApp.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's right.
So tell the audience a little bit about sort of what that looks like as far as Gartner goes, because I think it's a brand that most people know.
Yeah.
Capterra as well, but then you have Software Advice and GetApp. Yeah.
So Capterra's been around for a long time, and so have the other two. I think Capterra's about 20 years old. Gartner, our core business is an enterprise IT business, research consulting for large enterprises. And about 5 or 6 years ago, they acquired, over the span of a few years, they acquired GetApp, Software Advice, and Capterra. Okay. They're somewhat similar businesses, but they solve really distinct buying behaviors. Mm-hmm. In other words, they all provide software reviews and ratings. Mm-hmm. They all help businesses make decisions about the types of technologies they need to solve their business needs. But they do it in a slightly different way. So for instance, Capterra is really sort of our mass market brand. It's the brand that says, hey, we're going to include the entire technology software universe, and we're going to provide, the right filtered sorts and the right reviews and the right ratings and everything you need to make decisions. If you go to GetApp, it's going to be a little bit more technical. Mm-hmm. It's going to be focused at customers who are really concerned about integration, let's say, integrating with other technology in their business, the security of their platforms, much more, I would say, technically sophisticated questions and solutions. And then our software advice business is actually a slightly different business model, and that's really about taking customers further. So it's not just about them doing their own navigated search and then kind of clicking on a vendor and saying, hey, Salesforce sounds interesting. Mm-hmm. Instead, we actually meet them wherever they are. And so whether they fill out a form, whether they want to chat, whether they want to talk to an advisor on the phone, we help them all the way through and help them choose based on their specific needs, their industry, their business challenges, help them find the right solution.
Give them the advice.
Then we give them the advice.
And Capterra is really targeted towards SMBs for the most part.
Yeah, all three have been almost entirely SMB, but what we've seen in the last year or so is we're continuing to move up market. Mm-hmm. So I think we're getting more and more folks from slightly larger companies. And I don't imagine that that's probably like your central IT shop at Oracle or some big organization. I think what that is, it's probably pockets of shadow IT around the company, a marketing organization and a larger company who just needs help with project management.
Gotcha.
And so we're seeing those pockets, but it's great. It's kind of opening up. It's making sure now that our content and our website and our campaigns are all targeting the right sort of mix of personas.
Gotcha. Great stuff. You recently mentioned that you get inspired by strong women in business and entrepreneurs who have a story to tell. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what has inspired you and what's your story as far as that goes.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think we all have fairly unique stories. We've all gone through interesting and diverse sort of career paths, but I think we all encounter very similar issues. Mm-hmm. And I'm definitely not a sort of women as victim mentality.
Sure.
I don't believe in that. I think we have some amazing women who have done great things. And I think the more that women tell their story, the more they empower other women. So I think the reality is, there's all kinds of campaigns going on to try to get more women into leadership, and all that's great. Mm-hmm. But I think we have to recognize why we want women in leadership. So you see a lot of things around, if women could just sort of leave their personal life at the door, we'd have more women at the leadership table. If women could just behave like men when they're sitting in a boardroom, we'd have more women. But the reality is, then what's the value of having that woman there, right?
Sure.
Like, I think we bring a really unique perspective. I think we bring a different emotional intelligence, a different understanding of the room. And I think the way that we start to get there is by recognizing the other women around us. And so I had a group of women when I was at Rackspace before I came over to Gartner. And we would watch each other in a room, and we would sort of notice if like one wasn't talking, or if one made a great comment, we'd say, "Hey, Becky, that was a great comment. Like, can you tell me more about that?" Or we'd sort of try to highlight, and then afterwards be like, "Hey, you used uptalk," which is like a women's term that means you state your facts with a question on the end, like. The market is growing. Like, it kind of sounds like you don't actually believe what you're saying. And so we coach each other on that. Hey, you didn't come across as credible. Like, next time, just deliver it. Like, take command. With conviction, yeah. And the more you can kind of coach women around you to say these things, the more that you can coach women to speak up in a meeting, to have conviction with the way that they say it.
Feel empowered.
To feel empowered. Absolutely. I think the more you're going to get those strong opinions, because I think we just add a different perspective. And I love seeing some women. There's also this expectation that if a woman's going to make it to that level, that they're going to be sort of perfect when they get there. And they're not going to be too bitchy, and they're not going to be too polite, but they're not going to be too demanding. Like, it's sort of this really clear balance. And I think the reality is, like, we have flaws just like men. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be there.
I think men have more flaws.
I'll give you that.
I would agree.
There's this great leader, Sarah Robb O'Hagan. I don't know if you've ever followed her, but I was on a panel with her last year at the Texas Conference for Women. And she just blew me away. She's been a major executive through like turning around the Gatorade business. She wrote a book called Extreme You. She was former CEO of Flywheel. And she talks about failure all the time. And she just continues to kick butt. She's been fired from multiple jobs. And it's a great story because it just makes you think like, man, like women can be awesome. We can still screw up because we're going to. But having those voices in there and letting young women know that they can fail, I think is unbelievable.
I think failure is part of the journey. Everyone experiences failure. And, the beauty of failure is you learn from your mistakes and your failures and you improve upon that and you get better over time.
Absolutely.
Have there been other women that have inspired you along your path?
Yeah, for sure. I've had a few. I've had ones that have inspired me in a more positive way and others with more negative. I've worked for a senior female leader who taught me about the leader I don't want to be. Sure. And so that was really inspiring for me to kind of be like, okay, so women in power is not always a good thing. Like there is some balance there.
Yeah.
And then I've had others who have inspired me to sort of embrace the fact that I'm a working mom and embrace all of that and use it to my advantage. So my old boss, Carla Sublett, she's now the CMO at National Instruments. She was the marketing leader at Rackspace for a while. And one day she came to me 3 times to get me to take a new job. She wanted to promote me. And I was like, Carla, I don't want to do that. And she was like, why? And I was like, because I'm really content right now. I was like at the director level.
Yeah.
I said, I'm really content. I make every one of my kids' sporting events. I never miss a ballet recital. I'm home every night for dinner. Like, I'm really good at
work-life balance.
Absolutely. I'm like, if I stay like this until my kids go to college, I'll be perfectly happy.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay. And then she came back and she was like, I want you to do it. I think you can do it. She was like, I will, no travel, none of that. Like, you're the right person for this role. We'll figure all the rest out. And so finally I said, fine, I'll do it. And so I did. And it was the best move I made. It totally accelerated my career from there. I got great opportunities. I got out of my comfort zone. Right. I was just so convinced that like, gosh, can I take on a new job and new responsibilities? And I had 3 small children that were probably like 2, 4, 6 at the time.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was like,
a lot to juggle.
And, but I think you take it day by day. It's not like you wake up one day with 3 kids and a senior job. You work every day. You sort of get better and better at it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So it's been great.
Awesome. So let's talk about your everyday at Gartner. So you have over 80 marketers that you manage.
Yes.
And you're responsible for brand, for paid, for SEO, for PR across these 3 different entities, Capterra, Software Device, and GetApp.
Yes.
What does your day-to-day look like? What's your week look like? How do you sort of manage 80 marketers? Are they distributed? And you have these 3 different entities. How do you sort of prioritize accordingly?
Well, I'm honestly still figuring it out.
Okay.
I'm 4 months in.
Yeah.
I sort of gave myself 60 to 90 days to observe, to listen, to not make drastic decisions without having full context.
Which is great.
Yeah. And so so a lot of what I've been trying to understand right now is what are the individual functional priorities that we're seeing at the marketing level? So our marketing channel needs. What are the business requirements? Meaning, what are customers asking for Capterra, for GetUp? Where does software advice need to go to take it to the next level? Trying to understand those business strategies, and then figure out how can we leverage marketing to support all of those priorities. And so, so that's what we've been doing the last few months. My day-to-day now is really, okay, we've identified sort of what are the top 8 to 10 strategy or 8 to 10 priorities we need to focus on for the next 6 to 12 months. And what are the initiatives we need to undertake to support that? Are there resources we need? Are there people we need? Is there some change management we need? Is there some org redevelopment we need to look at? And so I spent a lot of time doing that. I try to balance my time between sort of new initiatives, meaning things that like big, meaty problems, cross-functional problems that we need to solve. One-on-one time with my leaders, really understand their development challenges, their resource needs, what they're working on, how I can help them. And then spending a lot of time with my first team. So I'm a big believer in first team.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so that's the concept of your peer group, the sort of people that all report to the same leader, primarily. And the reason why that group is so important is, to me, like when we have those side-to-side relationships, then everything our teams are working on, we know there's air cover for them because we're aligned at the leadership level. And so I've worked for leaders who have not invested in a first team, and I've noticed it in the walls I hit working cross-functionally. And so I think it's so important, and the more we can do this from the top down, I think the more collaboration, communication, just an assumption of good intent.
More alignment.
Absolutely. More alignment. And just knowing that if there's a conflict, that I can go straight to them, and it's not even a conflict by that time. You sort of sit down and be like, hey, like, I know we're all coming from a place of good. Let's talk about your assumptions, my assumptions, and let's work through it.
We're all working towards the same business goals.
Absolutely.
Let's be a team and make it happen.
Absolutely.
Love the first team idea. That's great.
Yeah.
Can you tell us sort of, I know you're only 4 months in, but how do you think your customers' prospects and needs are changing?
I think there's a lot. So, as I explained, our sites are essentially software reviews and insights, right? When buyers are looking to make software technology purchase decisions, they want to go out. We know that 96% of buyers look at customer reviews online before they make a purchase decision. And we know that 97% of those customers are looking for recency. They want to know that the reviews came in the last 6 months or the last year. And so given that, we need to make sure that we are always sort of evaluating the market and that we're always getting the latest and greatest insights. And so with that means that we need to have a very aggressive sort of reviews collections process. We need to make sure that we are meeting customers wherever they are in their entire journey. So from thought leadership, when they just want to understand, like, what kind of technology do I need to start a food truck? All the way down to, I'm ready to buy project management software and I'm down to 2 choices. Which one's better? So we need to be able to meet them with content all the way through that journey.
Very different use cases.
Very different use cases, absolutely.
But still serving a similar need.
Yeah, and they're going to come into our site at any one of the steps in between, too. And so it's, how do we get smarter? They're smarter than they've ever been, right? Because customers have access to so much information and they have it real time. And so that's super important. Their needs are getting more sophisticated. They used to use one piece of technology. Now everybody's gone through digital transformation. They're using 5, 6, 20, 30, 100, 1,000 pieces of technology. And they want to make sure they all work together and they complement and they're streamlining. And then they also just want to make sure they're getting the best deal. They're moving, to SaaS solutions. They used to all be on-prem. Like, there's a lot of changes. And so we have to make sure that not only do we have the broadest selection of software, because that universe is exploding, but that we also have the most robust information possible for that universe.
Gotcha. How do you get rapid, unbiased consumer feedback, to know that you're addressing the needs of your consumers?
The most immediate and obvious way is vendor conversion rate. So that's our metric. And that just means that a customer has come to our site, which means we got them there with something meaningful. We had campaigns or whatever running that were meaningful enough to get them to the site. That when they got there, the content that they found and the information they found was meaningful enough that it answered their questions, that they have identified a short list of vendors that they want to pursue, and they've actually expressed interest to those vendors that they want to learn more.
Gotcha.
So that means, so to me, if they've expressed that interest to the vendor, then we have met their needs all the way through. So that's the most tangible metric. I think overall, we run all kinds of surveys. We test everything. We test landing pages. We A/B test user experience constantly. And so all of those things obviously get us smarter. We do competitive intelligence a lot, looking at other sites to kind of see what are best practices, how are forms evolving. It used to be this obnoxious pop-up. Now it's sort of ingrained in your experience. You don't even realize you're sort of filling out a form. So there's little things like that, I think, that we constantly do. But I think vendor conversion rate is sort of the most natural health of how our site is delivering on our business needs.
Gotcha. So continuous iteration to improve the overall user experience to hit the metric that you're looking for.
Absolutely.
So Kelly, let me ask you, Capterra is aiming to become the leading online resource for business software buyers. What strategies are you implementing for the same?
So I think, our vision at Capterra is to, or across all of our brands, but specifically with Capterra, our vision is to enable our customers to accelerate their growth by embracing technology, and not just technology, but the right technology solutions for their business and to meet their needs. And so that means that we have to be buyer first in the way that we design our site. And that means that we have to build a strategy that's focused on being buyer first, while maintaining our great relationships with our vendor partners. So if you think about the business model, we partner with all the software vendors that are traditional Gartner clients. And then we put them on the site. We collect a lot of reviews, content, insights, and then share those with our customers. And so our job is to sort of make that match between buyer and software provider. And so our job at the end of the day, though, is if we don't have those buyers coming in and them not satisfied by the experience, then the rest doesn't matter.
Sure.
And so if I think about the strategy that enables us to be the leading online provider, it's definitely the right user experience. It's about having the broadest set of content, which means you have the most software providers, you have the most robust information about those providers, whether it's product details, integration details, thought leadership content, any of those kind of insights, and then having the broadest collection of reviews. We know that folks read so many reviews. I think they read a minimum of 6 reviews before they make any purchase decision. And so that means that we need to have a pretty deep set. If you think about, a catalog of 40, 50,000 software solutions, it's a lot of reviews you have to collect. And so we need all of those in order to help our customers get there, but do all of that without the customer being overwhelmed by sheer volume.
So I was actually going to go exactly toward there. It seems like it can definitely be overwhelming. Having so many different solutions out there, 30 to 40,000 is a lot. How do you help sort of navigate the buyers to get to the right solution? I know reviews are one component, but what else do you guys do to really sort of hone in to make sure that the buyers are getting the right solutions they're looking for?
Sure. So we do a lot of sort of tagging, if you will, meaning that we make sure that the vendors that are listed on our site are categorized appropriately. We try to break down in almost as sort of nuanced of category as possible, so that someone's looking, they're not just looking for like medical software. They're looking for chiropractic project management software, right? Very customized. And so with that, then you get down to 4 or 5 providers instead of 50,000. So we do a lot of that. And we also want to make sure that and that's, again, that balance. Our vendors would love to be in every category because a lead is a lead, right? But on our side, we also want to make sure that from a buyer perspective, that they're only in the categories that really make sense on the value prop they deliver. So that's a big way that we do it. And depending on the sophistication of sort of our recommendation engine, which is what sort of provides, based on a customer saying, hey, these are my filters. It needs to support this, it needs to have a price like this, it needs to have these features. Then we try to have as robust of a methodology as possible to deliver the right targeted list the first time. We know that Capterra buyers just don't want to take the time to find software, right? Like they just don't care. Like they're kind of like, just tell me the right project management software to use.
And I will trust you.
Yes.
Yes.
And so as quick as possible, we want to get them to a short list. And so that's our hope, is that we can make it as user-friendly and quick to an answer as we can. Gotcha.
Let me circle back to your team. I read you have 80 marketers on your team. So how do you tell our audience what are some of the best practices or pro tips in terms of managing such a large team? And are they distributed as well?
So I organize my team in two ways. One, I try to align them to objectives and KPIs to make sure. It's really hard to have someone who's driving brand awareness reporting into a performance marketer who's trying to hit revenue targets.
Sure.
Because they just have two different mindsets, two different objectives. And so I think that's a mixed bag. The other thing is I feel like functional expertise benefits when it works together. Okay. So for instance, I don't like to sort of have cross-functional pods in a reporting structure because I think that writers benefit from working with other writers. I think that designers get better by being surrounded by other designers. And so I think there's a core competency and a career path that comes from being organized that way. So when I think about my team, I think about my team through the funnel. So I have sort of brand awareness and reputation as a component, performance marketing, who's driving revenue and gross profit. I have analytics, who are sort of measuring the whole thing. And then I have my vendor marketing component that's sort of not managing the buyer side, they're managing into our software vendor side.
Gotcha.
And those are sort of the main pieces. There's obviously other supporting parts of that, creative that enables all of that, things like that.
And do you feel like by keeping sort of these silos, there's also, I guess, a way to think about it where if a designer is collaborating with somebody outside of sort of their ecosystem, there can be new ideas that they might not be thinking about. What do you think about that? I don't know if this question will make it or not, but I'm just curious because, sort of that cross-pollination between departments or coworkers can also be effective to inspire new ideas or to think a little bit differently.
Absolutely. I don't know any organization today that's not incredibly matrixed. The reality is that there's just no clean structures anymore, right? There's trade-offs either way. You can go functional in a way, you can go business unit in a way, and you end up with some sort of trade-offs. And so what we have tended to do, because my marketing organization is a shared service across 3 brands. And so what we have to do, so within each team, we have, like within our SEO team, we have a GetApp SEO team, we have a social, software advice, and a Capterra SEO team. And so they're learning best practices from each other, but at the end of the day, they're sitting in the core teams of their brands all day long. And so we definitely get that matrix. We go back and forth on sort of how that should be structured. But yeah, I think you can't operate without sort of that overlap. And so I'm a big believer in cross-functional core teams, that hub and spoke model that kind of always has like somebody who's grounded in what the business objectives are. And then all the spokes of how we take that to market.
I'm going to switch gears and ask you some fun questions. What is your superpower, Kelly?
Efficiency. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's how I live my life every moment of every day. I constantly, I don't waste time. I try to use every single second, and that doesn't mean that I'm like doing every second. I think investing in people and relationships and having quiet time, like those are all good uses of time, but you'll just never see me doing nothing.
So you're very efficient with time management.
Very efficient. I think I think it's a combination of my days as a waitress back in college and then being a working mom. I just don't have capacity to waste time at work. So I get in the office, I maximize every second, and I get home because then I get quality time with the kids, and then they're in bed, and then they're grown and moved out. It just goes fast.
Do you have any daily rituals or habits that you do that helps keep you stay focused and productive?
Yeah, I think, the mornings are mine. So I tend to get up at 5:15 every morning, and I exercise and do my quiet time for about an hour, just my stuff before I get going with the day. And that really helps me sort of get focused, get grounded, get my blood flowing before the day starts. Because as soon as, I'm sort of out of the shower, the kids are up and life is off and running.
Right.
And then by the time I get home, it's dinner, homework, bed, and we're doing it all over again. And so, the morning is my
morning
time.
Routine.
Absolutely.
That's great. What's the last book you read?
So I always tend to read about 3 at a time. I kind of always have an audio book running because, again, I don't waste time, right? So when I'm driving, that's a waste of time if I'm not listening to a book or a podcast or something.
Right.
And so I just finished Educated yesterday by Tara Westover. I don't know if you've read it, but it's fascinating. Okay. I listened to that on audiobook. And so that was a really great story. It's a memoir of her growing up in a pretty extreme environment. But really good. And then I'm reading The Tattooist from Auschwitz. Okay. That's sort of like my fun read right now. Obviously, it sounds super fun. World War II. And then I always have sort of like a good life development book going. So I'm reading Love Does by Bob Goff. Okay. And that one is really about that loving people is not an emotion, it's an action. It's actually about serving people through versus just empty words.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Any favorite podcasts that you enjoy listening to?
I do. I like How I Built This. Okay. That's one of my favorites. I like listening to just hearing all the stories and how these people started. It seems there's so many people who are very successful entrepreneurs who started out with just like an idea and had, no business plan, no anything, and just sort of grew it out of something. And I think those are fascinating. I listen to sort of your, The Daily and The Skim and all that stuff to kind of keep up with what's going on in the world. And then I just started one called This is Uncomfortable. Okay. It's just a new one that just launched, and it's all about how money makes relationships complicated. And it sort of goes at it from all different angles.
Interesting.
But yeah, so jury's still out on whether that one's going to be good, but I started it a few weeks ago.
Okay. And if you had to sort of think about a moment in your career that was one of the highlights, what would you think that is?
Oh, that's a good question. So I have probably a couple career-wise, and then I had a couple just sort of lifestyle-wise. But career-wise, one, I think my most proud launch back when I was at Kraft Foods. I used to be in brand management at Kraft. Yep. And I launched the original resealable packaging of Chips Ahoy cookies. Do you remember? Do you buy Chips Ahoy?
I know them? Chips Ahoy. I have not bought them in a while, but yes.
They have this resealable sort of thing. We launched it on Chewy Chips Ahoy when I was a brand manager on Chips. Nice. And it was, which was huge. It totally revolutionized the way that packaging works. We used to like pull that plastic tray out and you could never get it back in.
Right, and
so you end up
stale.
They get stale. You dump them in a Ziploc and you lose the branding then. As a chocolate chip cookie, you need the branding.
Great idea.
Yeah. And so that was like sort of my proudest moment to be a part of launching that actually totally changed. It drove aggressive revenue growth. And then the second one was when I was at Rackspace, they had never run a brand campaign of any sort. And so I went to our senior leadership team, and we went to the board and pitched a $15 million brand campaign, which was like leaps and bounds above any marketing campaign we'd ever spent anything on. And certainly not at the brand level. And the main things that we needed was their support on the concept, their support on the spend, and their support to give us a year. Because we knew that otherwise they'd be like, where's my pipeline 2 weeks later? Sure. We'd be like, that's not how brand works. And so but we were able to get it through, and we actually kept it alive for 12 full months. Okay. And we doubled our awareness in 7 months. Our goal was to double in 12. We doubled in 7. So felt pretty good about that. And it was just exciting because it was one of those that not only was it a great campaign and fun to see people sort of rally around it, but it gave people such pride to see the numbers move every month. Yeah. People were all rallied around the same cause. We updated the entire creative vid, our website, all of our collateral materials, in addition to the campaign itself. And anyway, it was just the most integrated and comprehensive brand work I think I'd ever done.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
It was.
Congrats.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Kelly, thank you so much for your time. This has been great. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Rajiv, your host at Center Stage. Kelly Hopping, Chief Marketing Officer at Gartner Digital Markets.
So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye.